So what is this listening from silence? There are so many ways of listening. In the world, actually, everyone likes to talk. And there are very, very few who likes to listen, right? If you ask someone to talk, then everyone wants to share their opinion. Everyone wants to talk. But the problem is nobody wants to listen to anyone. So we have very few listeners, true listeners in the world. Why? Actually, listening is not something easy. Because the true listening comes from silence. If I have to listen to someone or something, I have to have such deep silence within. Because when my mind is wandering and I am into so much of thinking, I can't listen. So the whole day, if the mind is just chattering, then when I sit to listen something important, I can't listen because my mind is just wandering. So listening is also actually a practice. But in the world, people talk about, better way of listening, but nobody talks about soul conscious listening. Listening really comes from soul consciousness. I have to sit, I the being, actually I have to switch off the doing mode and I have to switch on the being mode. Only then I can listen. So many times, even when we are on the Zoom calls, what do? We are doing. We are always in the doing mode, right? Some are cooking and listening, some are making tea and listening, some are doing something listening. And we think we are actually listening, but we are not listening. Because to listen, I need to be 100% present with my mind. And when I'm doing something, I'm already distracted into that. Right? So I may be doing something, I can still listen, but this is where the presence of mind is so important. If the presence of mind isn't there, then I'm not listening actually. And so the presence of mind, why it isn't there? Because I'm constantly in a doing mode. It's like we become subservient to our task, to our doing. We're so much into doing and forget to just be. There is no balance of doing and being. We are all called human doings or human beings. When we are called human beings, why we forget to be? So this is why there is no true listening. Because I'm too much into doing, the being is unable to actually catch. And because I'm not listening, I'm not doing what I have to actually do. There is gap in my doing because my listening isn't right. So that's why how many times even at school, the teacher would say, are you listening? The parents would tell to the children, are you listening? The teacher would say, are you listening? Sometimes you're talking to someone, they will say, are you listening really? So how do I actually use this form of listening? As I was saying, like, if you're in a meeting or a group of people, everyone wants to actually talk. And when others are talking, already I am actually creating a sort of judgment or what I have to say next, how I can impress this person, or what should I, listen, or what is that question I need to ask next. These are the things that actually keep going on inside my mind when I'm listening. So the focus is completely about me. I'm not truly listening to that person, what that person is saying. So in that, what is happening is, then we dismiss what others are saying because we are missing. Listening is an art. It's not just listening to words, but also listening to the bhavna, the intention, behind those words. Where is it coming from? What is the intention? Right. So, but my ego actually kicks in. And that's why in the world, nobody wants to listen to anyone, because everyone has this ego aspect. We're dismissing in that ego. It's like I'm blinded to the bhavna, to the intention of what others, where those words are coming from. If we really, everyone listens to each other, maybe we don't have to actually talk that much. And so in true listening, when I really listen to someone, right? Sometimes even that person, while they're talking, sometimes when we are not listening to someone, right? They will raise their voice more and more because they want us to listen. But if we give that few moments of quiet and we truly listen, and in that silent listening, those vibrations are actually putting that person also quiet. They are also becoming quiet. So in true listening, what is happening is actually a relationship is healing. And that's why true listening is like a golden key, to better relationships. We don't want to listen to anyone. And so think about this thing, if we could listen to what others are saying. So one is that understanding, right? Somebody truly wants to share something. So the moment we listen to them, we're not even listening. Sometimes we immediately dismiss. I don't want to listen, right? Immediately having a judgment towards that person. We are not allowing them to even finish their sentence. So in that listening, what is happening? There is a conflict there. So sometimes maybe genuinely that person wants to say something. And because I'm judging them, I'm dismissing them, the person may feel very disappointed. That is one scenario. The other scenario is like you can feel, that's why I'm saying it's very important to understand the intention behind that sharing. Sometimes just some have the habit of just talking, right? Some just have the habit of just complaining the same old things every time. You may have truly listened to them. You may have truly actually shared something very valuable, but it's their habit of every time coming back with the same aspect. And maybe they're not just talking to you, they may be talking to 10 others the same thing and not taking any solution from anyone. Why? Because they have the habit of talking, but they don't have the habit of listening. So they will complain about so many things and they would share about so many their problems, but the capacity of listening isn't there. And so when I'm sharing my problem to someone, also be quiet and listen what they're saying. This is another scenario. So I'm sharing, but I'm not listening. And sometimes you go to another person and say, this person was saying, sharing this. The other person will say, oh, they also shared with me. They also shared with another one, another one. So this is like a habit inside of talking about my problems or talking about my, things, but I'm not taking any solution. Why? Because I'm not listening. Why I'm not listening? Because truly I don't want to solve it. There is something inside me. I am in a comfort zone that I want to sit with it, but I want to talk about it. I truly don't want to solve that. And so it becomes a habit about talking about it, but not doing anything. And so that's like creating a lot of loss to oneself. But on the other hand, say somebody is like often coming to you, you know the intention, right? Once, twice you're listening, you gave them the advice. But then after that, so you need to know the intention, that, it's the habit of coming back and doing the same old thing. Then you can use the technique of listening, but not listening. You're hearing to them, yes. But you're keeping your silence too, because you heard that story many times. And there is no point. Sometimes, you're giving some suggestions. There is no point. Every time it's repeating. So you know the bhavna, you know the intention. And so you become a silent listener. Meaning, your ears are open, you're there, but actually you silent yourself from inside. You're not allowing that waste to go inside. Right? Like in Hindi, it's called like sunte hue nahi sunna. Like you're there, you're listening, but you're actually not taking in. So this sort of listening, it all comes from being silent within. Some have the habit of just too much of overthinking, like last session we were doing, right? No second thought, which means, no overthinking. So when there is too much of overthinking, then I don't have the habit of listening. So whenever this mind is going into overthinking, stop it. And if I don't have the habit of actually, doing these traffic controls or pausing for a moment, if I don't allow myself to do this kind of pause, then it's like an addiction to my own thinking. I don't even know I'm overthinking. So I'm too confused. I'm overloaded with my thoughts. And so because there is so much of burden of thoughts already here, and somebody is sharing something, or maybe sometimes they're giving me the right advice, but immediately I jump and I stop taking that advice even. I don't want to listen to it. So why? Because there is already so much of burden of these thoughts. So that doesn't allow me to be quiet and listen. So listening is an art, art of listening. And so why it's connected to soul consciousness, it's very much because as a being, my true nature is that silence, that peace. but we are not reaching that. We are not actually emerging that. We are not actually giving that time to experience that silence within. Because I'm always in that doing mode. And because I'm not experiencing that silence, you know. So as a soul, that's why this is our first lesson, to go back to that soul consciousness. As a soul, I am that peace. I am a silent being. I am a silent being. Let the soul become absolutely present, still, calm. And in that space, my mind is actually listening. So it's soul conscious listening. It's going straight into the soul. It's like when we get an injection, right? It goes straight into the veins. So it works faster. So when we listen from head space, we're listening from head space sometimes. Why? Because my ego is kicking in too many thoughts. I'm actually not listening. But soul conscious listening, you have to become inside this practice. So sometimes even when I have this soul conscious listening, say someone even comes, you know, with agitation, right? And, you know, they don't want to listen to you, or it's like, you know, they say something and it's say, you know, you're having a conversation with someone and you shared something and that person became agitated. And sometimes when people become agitated, just be quiet. Don't jump and argue at that moment, because that will never actually, it becomes more conflict. Just listen, become quiet at that moment. Because when I become quiet, when I become silent and listen, what the other person has to say in 10 words will say in 2 words, because I'm quiet. Why in relationships there's so much of conflict sometimes? Both want to talk, nobody wants to listen. When the other person wants to say something, if I'm quietly listening, you know, even if they're agitated, because of my energy, they will calm down. But when we are in an argumentative tone, we're ready to, not this way, that way, because of this, so many excuses and justification, you know, it's not serving the purpose. So that person is talking more because you're not listening. So to avoid such conflicts in relationships, listen. Listen quietly. And you see how that whole scenario will actually change. And because I am listening, I'm giving respect to the other person. And in turn, the same starts to happen. That person also will calm down. And when I have to say something, that person will listen. And maybe you may say, no, when I have to say something, that person won't listen. Okay, but then don't say at that time. When the person is not ready to listen, why would I waste my words? Right? So listening is a very, very important and powerful art. So with a silent mind, just like how when we listen to something very important, you have to be present. So what is happening is something very important, we are listening, but when my mind is too much going on, then it's not actually reaching the soul. It's going out from there. And so that's why there is no transformation. I may think I just listen to it, but then I didn't register it. So there is no inner transformation. I haven't registered. I don't know what it is because I don't know the power of it, what I'm listening to. Because I'm not listening. If I truly listen, I know the power of those words. How many times we listen, we sit, we play wonderful class, we listen to, sessions and wonderful talks. But then when we are listening from headspace, we'll say, yes, oh, that was very good. But then, have I really taken something inside which transformed me? The inculcation doesn't happen because I haven't listened. So if we could wish we could have these kind of, at an early age that, children would learn, in schools or, in curriculums, we could have the art of listening, And so now let's not just put on, yes, children have to listen. No, adults also. Where would children learn from? From adults, no? If as parents, we could listen to our children, what they're actually saying, the intention behind. If we could be the examples of good listeners so that they learn from us to listen. So if really in the world, everyone would have this power of listening, silent listening, then the world would be very different. Because nobody's ready to listen to anyone. And sometimes genuinely someone really wants to listen, Maybe someone really came to you, want to listen. But then today we say, I don't have time. And sometimes kids maybe want to say something. As parent, I don't give that time. And it's getting piled up inside the kid. Because there's no one to share. Sometimes people say that I'm experiencing this, but there's no one to listen to. Because as soon as somebody is sharing, then I'm judging them. So true listeners are very, very few in the world. And true listeners are, they have great power of stillness inside them. So think about it, churn about it. Just think if politicians would listen to people, teachers would listen to students, not just students listening to teachers. So we have to cultivate this art of listening from soul consciousness, not just listening from headspace, but listening from soul consciousness. It's very, very important. And so for this every day, for a few moments practice, this inner silence, this inner listening. Another profound form of listening to is your own self. What is going on inside me? Sometimes there are too many emotions. Why even I'm feeling like this? So listening to your own soul, to your own being, to your own mind is important. Sometimes why these emotions are happening, or why is that I'm behaving like this? Pause for a moment and ask. I have to ask myself, what's going on inside me? Let me be my own listener. Let me listen to my heart. Let me listen to my mind. So So maybe I don't have to depend sometimes, I have to share this one, that one. Nobody's listening to me. Let me listen to my own self. So listening to my own self is also healing. I'm creating that healing space inside myself. So like introspection, right? What's going on? If I'm getting agitated again and again, what's going on? Let me ask my own self. Let me listen to me. And then, of course, the most beautiful thing is to listen to God. Do I know how to listen to God? Or it's only I go to God and then I give my list of things. God, you be quiet. Let me actually tell you what you have to do for me. Only it's all about my story always. Let me always share about my story. You don't have to say anything because God is silently there. So it's about our story, God listening. But did I become silent and listen to God? Did I have this silent conversation with God, with the source? What is the source who want to actually, how does he want to guide me? What is the direction that he's giving me? In that silence, did I feel his presence? No, he or she, he's the source, right? Do I know how to become silent and listen to God? Think about it. Do I listen to God? Or I'm like, no, 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 no. Anyway, you have to listen to me. That's what we demand God, right? We demand God. God, you're not listening to me. I've been telling you. Am I listening to God? Right? We become sometimes angry, or sometimes, we sulk that God is not listening. God, will you do it or not? You take him for such, granted in so many ways. But what about myself? Am I doing my homework? Did I become quiet and listen to him? Where he's guiding me? These silent conversations with God are so healing. Do I share with God because he needs to do for me? I want him to do, or do I share with him, as somebody whom I'm close to? Why is that only God has to listen to me always? Why don't I listen? Right? So when I become even quiet and have these silent conversations and, listen to actually God, listen to my own self, it's very healing. And that's where all the solutions are. Sometimes something happens, we want to, challenge someone. We want to, ask. We are always in, questioning and complaining. But when we turn inwards, there are all solutions. I can do a huge healing process, going within myself, turning inwards, and listening to my own self and listening to the divine, to the source. So think about this. Next time when you're listening to someone, when somebody is saying something, do I have that humility? Do I have that silence to listen? Am I humble? To listen. So when I actually don't listen, I lose a lot of things in life. Because something valuable I may not catch. I may be behind in my learning. So this art of listening is one of the qualities of, golden age, which I need to cultivate from now. Don't jump into conclusions. Don't jump into assumptions immediately. Don't jump into judgment. Not like this, not like that. That's why so many miscommunications in relationships. This one is shouting, that one is shouting. Nobody wants to listen to each other. So soul conscious listening.